There we go. Well, welcome everyone to this meeting of the Chinook Winds Camping Ministry Network. We're joined today by a guest, Vicki Nelson, who is I'm looking forward to actually knowing your full title, but I've known it as the stewardship animator for a bunch of different regional councils. Joining us today for a conversation about stewardship and campaigns for camping ministry. I wondered before we hand it over to Vicki, if it might be useful to Vicki to understand where everybody's coming from and what your relationships are to camp. So before I hand it over to,
Well, can I actually include that in my I have some questions I'm hoping people will answer. Is that okay? Because I do want to do
perfect.
introductions, right? Is that okay?
Let's do it that way then. But before we begin, I'd invite you, if you know the territory on which you're located, to maybe drop that on the chat, and I think that'll probably come up in Vicki's presentation too. But Chinook Winds Regional Council, I have the honor to say, is located on the traditional lands of Indigenous peoples. For us in Chinook Winds, that includes the people of Treaty 7, of which the United Church of Canada is a signatory to. Our ancestral church was a signatory to Treaty 7. And the nations of our region are the Yarhe Nakota First Nation, including the Bearspaw, the Chiniki, and the Goodstoney First Nations, the Nitsitapi, including the Siksika, the Piikani and Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and we are also located on the region of the Battle River territory of the Métis Nation of Alberta within Otipemisiwak. We acknowledge that many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations, and affirm our commitment to the principles and actions of reconciliation. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to Vicki.
Sure. Thank you, folks, for being here and spending a few minutes with me. And thanks, Chris, for the invitation. I am going to do the thing where I share my screen, just because I find it helps me kind of keep track of where I am, so I don't just talk for 40 minutes. But and also this first slide has my email address, which you are totally welcome to copy down and use. If you have questions about anything that I say that you don't get to, or I'm going to invite you to engage with me in like further learning. So if you want to do that, then you can take note. So I, just as a quick introduction for myself, my official title is Community of Faith Stewardship Support. And so all of you that work in camping ministry, it's different places consider those communities of faith or not, but in my world, camps are very much communities of faith. And before I worked in this role, I actually worked as the executive director at a United Church camp at Lumsden Beach Camp, which is just northwest of Regina, Saskatchewan. And I did that for 7-ish years. And before that time, I served on the board. And before that time, I served as a staff member for 8 years. And I've also started a few different camps, non-United Church camps in Saskatchewan. And so I just like am very, very passionate about camping as a it's like a model for community building and for honestly societal change. So I talking about money, where I'm not going to get too much into the sort of theologies of camps and I wish I that's a different thing. Let's do that another time. But I do want to talk about sustainability and money and that kind of thing. So, but I don't ever know how to advance slides on Canva. I do want to hear about you folks. So I have to write things down. I forget. So your name is on your screen name, but share it anyways, because it's nice to say your name aloud, the camp you're with, and your role with the camp. Oh no, my computer really wants to restart. Okay, hopefully that doesn't happen. And then the most important thing is I would love you to share 1 or 2 reasons that you love the camp that you work with. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can actually see everybody really well. But yeah, so let's just do a popcorn. I'll go first really quick. So I already did mine. My name is Vicki. I work with Lumsden. I volunteer with Lumsden Beach Camp still, and I'm really involved in fundraising with that camp. And a reason that I love Lumsden Beach Camp is because I think that um, oh man, this is actually a harder question. I should have practiced this on myself, but there's a million reasons. But I think that it is the place that young people feel closest to each other and closest to the divine. And I love that opportunity for them. And so I'm going to invite Kathy with a C to go next.
Hi, I'm actually an interloper from Pacific Mountain Regional Council. Um, Pamela Evans suggested that I might be interested in hearing what Vicki had to say. I work with Camp Spirit, which is actually a day camp program that is part of the First Third Ministry for Pacific Mountain Region. My role is regional minister with Camp Spirit, and something I love about Camp Spirit is that anybody who wants to attend has a very low barrier way of accessing whatever financial support they need to participate. And I invite somebody else.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure. Would you?
I'll invite the other Kathy, Kathy with a K.
Well, at least you can finally see my face anyway. I don't know what happened, but anyway, I'm on here twice. So I am Kathy Kohler. I'm the director at Camp Kasota West, and something just happened to everything. Are you? Can you hear me?
We
can
can
still
hear and
hear
see
you.
you.
Anyway, um, what was I? The role, and then the thing I love most. The thing I love most is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
I'm going to have to do some wiggling after I finish this. So the thing I love most is seeing the kids, uh, their happy faces when they're running around having a great time and getting along well and cabins and the other thing I really love is the fact that they get so connected to their counselor, and so they feel that their counselor is just so important to them, and they'll do that all year, and they look for that counselor when they come back the next year. So that's the things I really love about it. And I will ask about Angela.
Hi, I'm Angela from Kasota East Camp. I guess my role is part of the management team. I'm director of camp operations. So I'm not on site. Most of my role is off-site, so I don't always get to see the children out there. But what I really love about our camp is that we offer a campership program, so a sponsorship for campers who otherwise couldn't go to camp, and just those interactions with the parents, and how grateful they are that they can send their children to a safe space for a week, and they don't have to worry about feeding them. They don't have to worry about finding babysitting for them. It's like an amazing opportunity for them. So that's what I really love, when I get to tell a parent, yes, we will cover, like, just spend $50, we'll cover the rest, right? Because we have these amazing donors who will cover the rest of the fees. So that's, in my role, that's one thing I really love about our camp. I guess we'll move on to Shelley.
Hey, thanks, Angela. So I'm do communications with Chinook Winds, and I've been enjoying working with Chris and in providing some support communications wise with the camps here. So I I did work at a camp when I was 18, and it was a great experience. But in terms of being with our camps in Chinook Winds, what I've appreciated and experienced about the work that all of you are doing is the self-confidence that the kids seem to gain, and also that the young leaders, and the ability to articulate their faith, and it's you all do very beautiful and wonderful work. And Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina Whitmire from Canyon Church Camp. I grew up in a small camp in Saskatchewan. But I'm the current president of Canyon Church Camp. So I became president the year of the fire, right before the fire. So it's been a learning experience for me. What I love about camp, I don't know what there isn't to love about camp. Um, I love that kids can go and just be whoever they want to be, and they're authentic there. They can be someone different there than they are on a normal day at home. And that's probably my favorite thing about camp. And my favorite place to be at camp is sometimes in the dish pit, because the kids sing and they laugh and I don't know, it's just a happy place to be. And yeah, I will pass it on to Sherry.
Good afternoon. Sherry Hansen, I'm with Custodies Camp. I'm on the board of the camp. So formal legal name, Red Deer Presbytery Camp Society. And what I love most about Kasota East Camp, and I think camping ministry camps in general, is two things. I proudly wear my camp hoodie often when I go grocery shopping or around community, or when I visit other United churches that have been the founding congregations of our camp. And just the reception of people that see the logo and recognize it and tell a story of a connection to that camp and how important the place and the ministry is to so many others. And that part of that ministry is as equal the kids coming to camp, but I really think that the ministry of recruiting and teaching young people to run camp is a huge thing that I love so much, and it creates that environment of not adults looking after the kids, but actually just the next generation up from them are looking after them and building those relationships. And as Kathy talked about, how important that camp counselor becomes to that young person. But those camp counselors become who they are at camp because of the tremendous leadership of a team of people that just really nurture that compassion and empathy and caring that's nurtured with the kids. So that's what I love a lot. I will pass it on to Karen.
Thanks, Sherry, everybody else. I'm Karen Larder. I am Larder K, but I'm at school, so I logged into my computer and I became Larder K. I'm with Canyon Church Camp as well. And I was the program director there for the last 3 summers before the fire in 2017. And I went to camp there in the early 80s as a kid and all the way through doing all the things somewhere along the way. And officially now, my role is with the board of directors as the fundraising committee chair. And I think some of the things that I love about camp all stem from some kind of connection that I was able to get to know and grow in myself better as a young person and even as an older person. And getting to facilitate so many others connecting with nature and connecting with each other in community. That's what it's all about for me.
Thanks, Karen. Chris, do you want to say anything about your relationship with camps?
Sure. I serve Chinook Winds Regional Council in First Third Ministry and in Justice and Community Faith Networks. And this is a group that crosses over into both First Third and our networks within Chinook Winds. So it's been a pleasure to be able to convene you and share resources with you. My connection to camps, I used to be a water program lead at a camp here in Southern Alberta, as well as a camp cook for a season. I loved water programs. Seeing kids who were not really confident gain confidence in a canoe is a really special thing. I became a better cook by knowing what not to cook in church in camping camps. And so I think that like when we were able to introduce things that were really exciting for kids and for staff, they perked up a lot. So I have a new appreciation for the different ways in which we can make camping food interesting. I think and I just wanted to share that for camping ministry, specifically United Church Camping Ministry, when Shelley and I had the opportunity to travel around the province and get interviews with your young adult staff, I think that that's really what highlighted what an important ministry this is for the United Church of Canada. The passion and commitment and joy that your young staff bring to the camping ministry is certainly very motivating for us in the regional office.
Nice. Thanks. Well, good work, everyone. And the reason I asked you to share something you love was because I didn't think it would be very hard. It didn't seem like it. You all had like wonderful things to share. And also because we're going to talk about inspiring donors and remembering the things you love and the things that, you know, drive you to volunteer hundreds of hours every year or to work a job that can sometimes be 24 hours at a time is because you love it, right? You love something about it. So so that's why I bring that. And I was just going to comment, Sherry, you said you wear your hoodie really proudly. I'm going to talk about sort of fundraising campaigns in a second. And I have a bag somewhere in this office that we did a campaign where if you became a monthly donor, you got this bag. And so it's like a tote bag. It's just a regular, I'll find it. Anyways, and I use mine all the time. It's like my library back and forth bag. And I see them in the community and I know because the only people that have them are monthly donors for the camp. And so it's, yeah, there's something special about merch as well. Okay, so I just figure out how to advance this. So I have some bad news. I was talking to Chris before we met and I was just kind of like, you know, what are camps like? What's the vibe? And he's like, he said, I think there's a lot of sort of uncertainty about the future and sort of complicated relationships with the church, the wider church. And so I just wanted to say that I hear you. It's very difficult and challenging to be a camp within the wider church right now. But it's still important. And the truth is that I think we need to imagine that, you know, whether it's regionally, but specifically, especially from congregations that maybe used to support us financially, that's probably not going to grow, that kind of generosity. I will speak from my own experience. Our camp receives generous donations when a church closes, but that's one time and that's it forever, right? So I think I just want to be straight up. We are going to talk about talking to churches and talking to church folk, but we are also going to talk about beyond that, how we can raise funds beyond that. Because even if churches are growing, it's probably they're growing because they're amalgamating with other congregations. And so there's still sort of a shrinking in there. And it's not that they don't love you, and it's not that congregations don't see the amazing value of camps. Same goes for the denomination at large. It's just that this is the reality of sort of Christendom in 2024. So I also wanted to say that grants are awesome. And I don't know all of your financial pictures, but grants are also often really project tied. So you need to do something to get this money. They're also not necessarily guaranteed. You can pour a lot of energy and time applying for a grant and not receive it. So I really think for camps, relationships and personal donations are a more steady and a more important way forward. So that's what I'm going to talk about. That being said, within the United Church, camps can absolutely apply for capital assistance loans and grants, for Vision Fund grants for youth ministry, for grants from the United Church Foundation. And then I'm sure there's the Calgary Foundation. There's lots of foundations in Southern Alberta as well that provide grant funding. And so if you want to talk about grants, especially I'll say within the sort of United Church sphere, I'm your person, your first stop to chat with, or you can go directly to the foundation and talk to Jenna there. But do reach out and we can chat about it. But the rest of our time today, I'm going to talk about like what I'd call stewardship in church lingo, but we're going to talk about fundraising essentially. Okay, so I always encourage group camps to take a look at your budget and so just look at what percentages, like how much of a part do camper fees pay? What about rental income? What about grants? What about fundraising? And when I say fundraising, I mean events. So like, when I say fundraising events, what about how much comes from donations? So that would be from individuals or from maybe, you know, like small businesses or something like that, merchandise sales, and then you might have others depending on your camp context. And there's no sort of correct formula. Like I can't say, oh, you should at least be getting 60% of your income from camper fees or whatever. There's all of our camps are really different. And we receive different funds from different pots. But there is this delicate balance because I worked as an executive director for many years of trying to set your camper fee amounts to the point that they're sort of doing a good job of sustaining the camp, but also making it manageable for camp families to pay for it, so that you're not having to rely super heavily on camperships or camp subsidies, and also kind of in line with like what are other camps charging in the area, right? So there is this delicate balance, and I'll say like I'm opening my door again to talk one-on-one if you want to talk about your camp's context and sort of develop a bit of a plan following this. I'm very open to that. I also run a program that I'll pitch at the end actually, but there is some work to do around figuring out like when your camp is full, right? Like how many people can you sleep? How many people like, and if you're a day camp, it's a little bit different. We can talk about that as well. But there is some magical numbers around maxing kind of your staff numbers, your staff capacity, maxing out your rental capacity. You know, how many weeks in the year do you have running water and a site that's available to rent if you do it all? And then trying to balance that out. And then the other piece of the pie that exists is going to be either grants, donations, or fundraising. I'm pretty sure. Can I just like I can see your faces nodding. Do all of you rely on some form of donations, grants, or fundraising? Yeah. Okay. Okay, cool. I don't want to assume that, but yeah. So we're gonna again narrow in on donations from individuals, but if you have questions on the other stuff, we can get there too. I don't actually have that many slides because I'm hoping it'll be a bit more of a conversation. So it is really about relationships. Asking for money or inviting generosity is truly grounded in relationships. And lucky you guys, camps are really freaking good at relationships. That's kind of our currency, right? I'm pretty sure everybody kind of touched on that. Karen mentioned connection. Like everybody talked about how, you know, counselors and how they see leaders. And anyway, so we're good at this. This is actually our wheelhouse. And also we have sort of a large pool of people to talk to who love us. So that includes camper families, that includes alumni, that includes church folk. You know, as Sherry mentioned, the people that have connections from the old Red Deer Presbytery to Kasota East, right? That's a large pool of people. And then I'd also say, and it depends on your context, other people that care about you existing are people that rent your facilities, are neighbors. If you have like a cottage community nearby, they're actually invested in you not going away. There's I'm going to draw on my camp experience a lot, but you have to drive through a little cottage community to get to Lumsden Beach Camp. And they desperately do not want the camp to close because then it'll be subdivided and turned into, it's like 200 acres of lakefront property, right? So they are very keen on us succeeding to the point that, yeah, some of them are donors. And they often look to like rent the facilities and support us in different ways. There's also some tension too, but that's, you know, neighbors. And so I did want to say, like, I looked at all of your camp websites and as a potential donor, I went in and I also looked at it as a potential parent. I was just like, oh, and I'll say all four of you have very lovely websites. So great job. I look at a lot of camp websites and that is not universal. So really lovely to look at. But I did notice that two camps, Bar Harbor and Kasota West, I couldn't find a way to donate online. So I can't do that. And I think Shelley actually went and did the same thing and looked around and tried to make donations. So we'll talk about that, about how to accept donations. So let's talk about that. Like if you rely on donations from people right now, how do you do that? And maybe it's just not online. Maybe people have a culture of mailing in checks or sending e-transfers. But if that's the case, it should still have e-transfer information or, you know, you could get a charitable tax receipt, send your check here. And I'm also just curious, like, when do people ask for donations, or when are people asked to donate? Is it kind of like at Christmas time, we send out a letter to all our past supporters or whatever? I often think about talking to people in sort of two groups. So I have on this slide here our church folk. So these are people that, and again, it's different, but probably, did all of you receive presbytery funding before the end of presbyteries? Yeah, sort of some. Maybe. Okay. And then like often the context is that presbytery might be funded some, maybe the conference, and maybe individual congregations provided financial support. And if your experience is typical, that's sort of shrinking. And so that doesn't mean that people in the pews don't love you, but they just no longer, they never necessarily had to donate as an individual because they knew their congregation was doing that. But now we want to invite them to donate to the camp, or you want to invite the congregation to give again, and you do sort of some of the legwork of encouraging donations from people in the pews. And so I'm not actually very good at the manual, so maybe other folks here that work for the United Church can help me with this. But my understanding right now, the way that assessments are calculated for congregations, what congregations pay to the church, if they make a contribution to a ministry like your camp, they actually, that's sort of like a tax deduction for them on their assessment. So, I hate to be like, whatever, pulling from the same pool, but that's some information you could communicate to communities of faith as well. So at my camp, we had several monthly donors, like individuals who gave monthly, and I'm going to talk about monthly donor campaigns in a minute. But when that switch happened in 2019, I guess, they switched it and started making donations, higher donations to their church. And then now we have sort of what we call sustaining congregations who give monthly through PAR, just like anybody would give to a congregation. The congregation gives to the camp, and sort of that's like a write-off on their taxes. So something to consider. The other group is camper families, or like camp connected people. So if your context is the same as lots of church or camps across the country, lots of your folks aren't actually deeply tied to the United Church. They don't have a home congregation. Some of them will consider themselves United Church people, but they're not donors in United Churches, and they're not weekly worship attenders. So we need to talk to these people too. And we need to talk to them in probably a little bit different way, and at different times than we talk to our church folk. So that can happen during the registration process. That can be communicated to families through follow-up surveys and newsletters. But the point is you still need to inspire these people about your sort of meaningful work, right? What happens at camp? Lots of people don't even know. There's alumni do. They're like, oh yeah, camp is magic. But like families that send their kids, they're like, oh yeah, my neighbor said this was a good camp. You need to explain them that it's not just babysitting, right? We're offering something life-changing. Yeah, okay. What did I actually say on this slide? Okay, great. So I do want to spend a second talking about monthly donors. And so again, if you want to talk to me, well, we can have a conversation after I'm done blehing at you. But if you want to talk about your particular camp, I'm very happy to set up like a Zoom conversation. I really think this is an important move for camps. At Lumsden Beach Camp, when we knew that presbytery funding would be going away, in 2017, we sort of heard that was happening. We started a monthly donor program with the goal of kind of raising about $30,000 a year through monthly gifts. And it takes some time to build. So I'm glad we started a couple of years before presbyteries ended, but it has been phenomenal. It's the reason that camp still exists. We set a campaign. I think I've talked about this to many of you before, so sorry to hear the story again, but we just pushed for like 3 months really hard. We called and emailed past donors, like somebody who gives, say, maybe $100 every Christmas. We called them and said, hey, would you give $25 a month? And most said yes. And we also had these bags, which I'm just going to find because I keep mentioning it. Nope. Okay, just kidding. It's downstairs in my kids' library books in it. Yeah, shoot. Oh, well. We had bags so that there was like, that was the amount. If you gave $25 a month or more, you got a bag. So most people set that as their donation amount, but we said any amount's great. We also had like prizes. So if you signed up between think it was like January and April, for every $10 a month that you committed to, your name got entered into a draw, and there was, prizes for, like, the local coffee shop had gift cards, little baskets and stuff. So we really just did this really intense push for a short amount of time because we didn't have necessarily sustained energy to do it forever. But 6 of us just like got on the horn, called people, sent emails, and yeah, like pretty darn quickly, all of a sudden the camp was making what turned into about $25,000 a year through monthly donations. So it's not like a ton, but it's a couple $1,000s a month, which helped offset. Our camp received, sort of at the end of things, about $30,000 a year from Pres Retreat. So we needed to make that money up. And now we still grow it. Like, when people join, they're invited to become sustainers. And I had mentioned before we started that this camp Lumsden Beach camp's involved in a really large capital campaign, like a $1.3 million capital campaign. And a good chunk of it's paid for, but also a large chunk is loans. And so we are now looking for sort of we call our people sustainers, monthly sustainers, to help us make those loan payments, because otherwise it's going to be tricky. The United Church of Canada can run this for you through their PAR program, which I just actually really like. It's easy. But also you can do it on Canada Helps. They have a monthly donation, like a donation program. They take a percentage, but PAR takes 25 cents per donation up to a maximum. Like, if you have lots of donors, you won't pay more than, I can't remember, $25 a month or something like that. But also, if you're with a credit union, a lot of them have a program too called PAD, which is essentially the same thing as PAR and is free. What's nice about PAR is that 25 cents you're giving per donation is going back into the church to sort of run that program for others. So, and I think I'll say both of these groups make excellent monthly donors, and they'll do it for different reasons. So, the giving cycle, if you do anything with me after this, if you want to do one of my programs that I run and stuff, we're going to talk about Inspire, Invite, and Bank. Oh, the spacing on this is really wonky. Sorry. But this is actually how we talk to donors. This is how we build relationships, is inspiring. So we're going to tell our story and not our history, not like we were founded on the shores of this camp or this lake and whatever. That's interesting. But the compelling reason that you exist today, the compelling reason that hundreds of kids are going to come out to you this summer, what is that? You need to get good at talking about that and sharing that, and maybe honing that down to like 2 or 3 or less than 5 sort of things. And because you'll share different stories with different audiences. So yeah. The second part of it is invite. So don't just assume people are going to donate. Church folks actually are pretty darn good at showing up to donate. Generosity is something that is taught in church, in congregations. But if you are working with camp folk that are not church folks, generosity isn't taught. It's actually kind of this revolutionary idea that appears in Christian and other faith cultures, and not, you don't learn it in school as much. So you need to remind people and invite people to give. You also need to make it easy to give. So that means including a donation information on your website, whatever that is. And I'll really urge you to focus on getting regular monthly donors. Even if you start slow, even if like 2 people sign up from the board, great. That's some consistent gifts there. And then finally, you need to thank people. You need to tell them how they've contributed to this sort of unfolding story, and you need to connect it back to your Inspire. It is a cycle. So somebody makes a gift, you thank them, you tell them the thing they've done. You're like, hey, this summer we welcomed 400 campers to our site, whatever. And all this magic happened. And then they're inspired again. You invite them again, you thank them again, and the cycle continues. Is that all I had to say? Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of just wanted to talk and hear what you need. So that's my email address again. And I will just do a short pitch. So I, from time to time, sort of on an as desired basis, run a 3-part program that is very similar to a program I run for worshiping communities of faith or congregations. But I do it just for like camps, retreat centers, and sort of non-worshiping communities of faith. And it's pretty pretty good. I think so. I like it. And it really focuses on that inspire, invite, and thank thing. And through the end of it, I'd hope together we'll build an annual plan, a fundraising or a stewardship plan for your camp for sort of the next 6 to 12 to 18 months. And it's a small group. So I always run it when I have a few different ministries that want to come together. It's done over Zoom. It's free. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can send me an email and I'll put you on my list so that when I get 2 or 3 teams together, we can run that program. So I think that's all I wanted to say. I actually did want to hear from you folks about anything or answer questions or just have a conversation about what are the challenges to fundraising if you are fundraising to individuals right now, and see if we can work together on solving any challenges. Is that okay? That's pretty loose. Great. Okay. I'm seeing some nodding. So yeah, how's it going? Anybody get a bunch of donations in like this December for Christmas? No? Yeah, some. Karen's like, well, you folks are engaged in a big capital campaign, right? So Canyon Church is like actively asking.
Yeah, we did all right. We did a bathroom, build our bathroom kind of get flushing campaign before Christmas, and it did all right. We got a Lethbridge Community Foundation grant for that, which was nice. And this hasn't been announced yet, so Karen, don't grimace, but we did get a large CFEP grant just before Christmas, but we haven't told anyone yet. So it's going to go out this Sunday.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. But it's hard because we ask and we ask and we ask. It feels like over and over and over again. And I get tired of saying it. So
well, I understand you get tired of saying it, but I will say that I heard a study recently that our attention spans are actually worse than goldfish now. Like it's actually shorter, and people actually need to hear something about 8 times before they start to hear it. So when you're like, oh, we've sent an email about our bathroom fundraiser, we've sent 3 emails. Cool, just do 5 more. Like I know it seems like too much, but it's not. And you'll know it because if you actually pay attention to the people who are asking you for money, like, if you have given to Doctors Without Borders or to the Cancer Foundation or whatever, you'll notice you're like, man, they show up a lot. But then when you think the word charity, who comes to mind, right? So yeah, I get it. So, well, congratulations on the grants.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're pretty excited.
Yeah, Angela, go ahead.
That's kind of my struggle too. Like we don't want to always feel like we're only communicating with these people when we need money, right? So like I'm looking at our list, like we have like last year we had 65 different donors. So every one of them gets a thank you card as soon as they send a donation. Well, within 3 months, that's my target. So I give a thank you card, and then we give out Christmas cards at the same time. Or then at Christmas time at the end of the year, and it feels like it's the same people. So then we send out like our newsletter, but we don't really like just send out to these people saying, hey, can you send more money? Because I feel like the Christmas card, the thank you card is enough communication, but are you saying that that's not enough communication? Communicate more?
Yeah, I am. So I would say, so those are all, do you have a monthly donor program at the camp? Like, do you have monthly gifts that come in at all?
Yeah, and I was looking at it too, and it's like we stopped using PAR actually. We stopped because it wasn't worth it really, and really we have 2 people who are monthly donors, and one is my mother. So that's definitely I think where we need to expand on, but
yeah. So okay, so
slightly ask for more money yeah.
I would set goals is always the thing that I think helps, because if you're just sort of asking like just kind of wide open, like, could you give us more? I think you need to sort of either both and you need to set a little bit of a goal for yourself, being like, hey, we need to actually raise our donation amounts by 10% this year. And you need to sort of set a goal for them, being like, hey, we are trying to, like, Angela, is your position of like paid for position? Is this your job? or are you a volunteer?
I get an honorarium. No, I have a full-time job. This is my
Okay.
so
yeah.
but
Okay.
I get there's two of us who get an honorarium. So it's a volunteer
Okay.
position.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not trying to get personal. I'm just curious
No.
because that can often be a motivator, like to set an amount to be like your job, like if you were a job, whatever. We pay Angela, I have no idea how much you're paid, but we pay her $5,000 a year. Can we need to increase it by $5,000? We want to double Angela's time, or we want to get a second Angela, or whatever. And so you set a goal and you explain it to people. So we're looking for whatever, 40 people to give $50 a month. Can we find 40 people to give $50 a month? And so you kind of set that goal for, you tell the people that that's a goal. Other really helpful things are matching grants, or like matching donations, not grants, but like, so if you do, again, I'm like a big fan of kind of doing things in a condensed campaign. So you're not always asking, you're asking for one small season of the year. And so you find some people, maybe your mom, I don't know, or whoever, you line up and be like, hey, we're trying to raise $5,000. And we have an anonymous donor who's going to give 2,000, match the first $2,000 that come in. If you make a donation between now and February 29th, that donation will be matched. That's, double your impact. And then you do it, like, so there's like little tricky things. I would also say, I hear you that you're like, PAR's not worth it administering that, but I'm like, no way, double down on PAR. Trent, you have 65 donors, set a goal to get 40 of them giving monthly, and tell them that you won't ask them for more money, except like you're not gonna, if you do fundraising emails, which it sounds like maybe you don't, but our camp did a lot of fundraising emails. So like in December, we'd send out 4 requests for funds. And so our deal with our monthly donors, our sustainers, is we took them off those lists. So they don't actually receive any of those asks. They're almost paying to not hear from us, but they still get the Christmas card. They still get the thank you letter with their tax receipts. And then the other thing we do for our sustainers is we call them in the fall to tell them how the summer went. So, and just like not how the whole summer went, but we're just like, hey, thank you so much for your gift. We welcome this many campers. Highlight of the summer was this. And then our camp also has like beehives and stuff. So we drop off like a jar of honey or like a little thank you or something, not every year, not always, but we call them surprise and delights. They're little special surprises that delight our donors.
So who is doing the calling? I'm just trying, like, who has the energy and the time to, the board is, and the board knows the story of how the summer went to be able to tell that story in September.
I wrote a script for them. Like I essentially wrote a script, and lots of them would strategically call when they knew the person wouldn't answer, so they could just leave a voicemail, if I'm perfectly honest. So yeah, but every board member would get sort of 10 people to call, and or like, whatever, like not more than 10. And they just make those calls, be like, hey, you have this month, the call need to be made within this month. And here's kind of what you're saying. And honestly, people love it. Like people really appreciate the call. The personal thank you means a lot to folks, and it makes them feel connected to the camp, because they're like, lots of our sustainers don't have kids that go to camp anymore. They haven't actually been on site in decades, but it makes them feel like they know what's going on. And so that's really, really important.
So that is really a helpful kind of thinking about how we bridge to that. When we have, lead management positions that get busy with school come September, and they've got full-time jobs in that space. So maybe, trying to work with the people on site through the summer to help start writing that script of the story of camp this year, so that in September, because often the barrier is the board is governing, not operating camp. And so how do we know exactly how the camp went until we have another meeting? And sometimes that meeting is hard to have in a timely fashion because of the start of the school year and such a busy time for our people. So, and that's always
calls in August. You could too. Like it doesn't have to be, I mean, you can do it whenever, but.
No, I know, but I'm just, because it is that piece of we prepare for an annual report, and that annual report is really the big story of the camp year, but that doesn't go out until early January. And so everybody's wondered all fall, how did camp go, right? We try to communicate regularly with our champions who we're connected with each of our congregations, but how widely that story is getting out into the people that support us is dependent on their communication, right? And I have no idea how effective they're being with that role, right? And because that's a tricky space, but no, that's helpful to think. And so just trying to think how that could happen efficiently. And if you have any advice to kind of that place of getting ready to arm, because we do have the board that could be doing that. We just often don't necessarily have the story, right?
I would say like don't it's not going to be a full story.
Mm.
And you could even say that being like, hey, I'm like I'm a board member. This is what I know. It's like we have record number of campers coming this year. Our camp's working like two things. Like our camp is engaging in an affirming process, or we're looking ahead to renovations on the bathrooms, whatever. Like, and then you can invite them. If you want to see more pictures, follow us on Instagram, or if you want to get more information, like our annual report's coming out in a couple months. Do you want to sign up for our e-newsletter? Like I don't know everybody's context and how you already communicate, but it doesn't have to be a full story. It could just be like our bunks were so full this year, or like we've had amazing staff this year, or whatever. Like some sort of positive, exciting thing. And like the main thing you're actually just saying is like your gift is making this possible. Like your gift is we ran a summer program because of your gifts. And you can say like it's not easy to be a camp right now. And most people, especially if you're calling church folks, they'll be like, yeah, I get it. And
lots of that call is even a communication to each of the churches that does donate a certain amount.
Yeah, if you have churches that are giving, totally. And you could do like, again, it's all time, it's all energy, it's all work. So I'm just throwing out ideas, not saying everybody has to do everything all the time. But we did mini annual reports right after the summer that went out to every church that were bulletin sized, so that they had like 3 pictures, really quick stats, a message from our director, kind of like positive message. And they were like pretty and colorful. And then they'd go sent out to the churches. And some of them would be printed in color and still be pretty and colorful, and some of them wouldn't. And they would be put in like bulletins or shared on their social media or whatever, depending on the church. Again, that's out of our hands. Like we can't force churches to do anything, but if there is a big lag, like if your annual meeting isn't until the next year, it's a good idea to kind of share some of those stories, because people's brains are already heading towards the next summer. And you haven't even, it's kind of like you need to inspire them so you can invite them to give, so you can thank them. You can't, like you want to be back somewhere else in that cycle, not just back at Inspire 6 months after the camp, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Timely is important.
Timely is very important. Yeah.
Vicki, I think I find it helpful that you're reminding that the families of the campers are people who could be approached to be donors, and in terms of the ask, like I'm on the e-list for 2 political parties, and partly I keep myself on those lists because I find it fascinating to see how many emails they send out in a month. and how many occasions they find to ask. So yeah, so
also how exhausting it can be to receive those when your inbox is so full that you almost like, I think there's a sensitivity to that too many can be overwhelming for people.
Yeah,
where they resent it and they just delete stuff and don't even look at it.
There is when our 2 older kids went to Canyon Church Camp, and the one thing that they particularly loved was at Christmas time they got a Christmas card from all of the staff, and but it was Joel and their mom who was paying for camp. Actually, I think it was Joel, but I don't know that we got asked to donate to. So, but the joy on their faces, the kids' faces, when they got this and saw all these people who had meant something to them, like if I'd been asked, that would have caused me to donate. So
yeah, I mean, like a good strategy would be have those cards. So like I don't know how they were done, but like often camps they'll do the Christmas cards the week right in the summer. They'll write them out for the kids, right? And so you have them ready to go for Christmas, and then those are mailed out like November 29th and then December 5th. And an invitation like letter, a physical letter mailed out to every family who received a Christmas card with an invitation to give. I think that would be a brilliant idea because those families just saw their kids light up. They're reminded about camp, and then you've just invited them. So the Inspires happened, and then you invite them to give. You could also save on postage, put them together, but that's just like a little trickier. I think there's maybe like a bit of a dynamic there, but I think it's doable. You can be like, hey, kids, this is from your parents or this is for your caregiver. Like, and then they are like, this is for you. I don't care about this. This is like, it's covered in words, you know? Sorry, Shelley, I think I cut you off.
no, I was quite impressed that Canyon Church Camp was doing that when I remember how happy the kids were for that. Vicki mentioned it, but at before the end of last year, I realized that I could give to 3 camps, and so and part of I did is an exercise to see who was easiest to donate to, and and that ended up being Canyon Church Camp and also Kasota East Camp, and then and I'm sorry, but the other 2, yeah. So I ended up giving to Vancouver School of Theology. So so I would suggest, as Vicki had said, is to make it easy for people to donate. Is that there's a way that there's a way on your website, and we could talk more about that at another meeting. Canyon Church Camp, the Tithely form is very, which Kasota East has, is very easy to use. Okay. Canyon Church Camp also had the e-transfer, which I ended up choosing because I knew it was going to deposit into the account right away. But but I also had part of Christmas still on my visa, so the fact that I could do that was what was very was really beneficial. But the other thing I noticed about that is the people who, or the organizations like Canada Helps and Tithely and so forth, they all have these administrative fees that you pay. But I was impressed that Canyon Church Camp that you've gone with PayPal, and PayPal, when you go with these with either we use Stripe at the region, but you need to also ask for their nonprofit to get that. And Canyon Church, you must have done that. And so the fees have gone down for nonprofit on. So it's 1.99%, which is really good. So, but there are on the farms ways that you can ask your donor to pay your fees, and that could be and that's on my summer list for the region's that donor form. So, but that is something you can do.
I'm gonna say something that's like very controversial, but I actually don't. I think it's fine to pay fees. So like I understand that you're like, but 2% of like what we're bringing in, but that's kind of the cost of doing business these days. I know my camera got blurry. I don't know how to fix it, so sorry. Um, anyways, I don't the if you think about the time it takes, like I don't think this is the case for camps, but like lots of communities of faith I deal with, they're like, oh, we just want checks. But I'm like, yeah, but what about your administrator you're paying that has to go to the bank every week and deposit those? That's actually way more expensive than 4% on those donations. You know what I mean? So I think encouraging e-transfers, because that's like the donor pays if they have any fee, the donor pays it. That's like awesome. But credit cards are kind of people want points. Like honestly, nowadays, like credit cards are king. And so you're gonna pay some fees. And I think Shelley's right. You can like look at what those fees are. And I think if you ask them to cover the fees, just be gentle with that, or just accept that that's like a banking cost that's kind of built in. And remember that lots of churches I deal with, they'll have a thing being like, you can donate online, but we'll pay this fee, so we prefer you to not donate online. Do not talk your donor out of giving to you, because even if somebody gives $100 donation and you've now paid $3 in fees, you just got $97 more than nothing, than if you made it complicated. Like somebody's like, I have felt this like emotional, yeah. So the reminder that donating is an emotional act most of the time. Some is very strategic and tax based, but a lot of times it's like an emotional feeling. So you feel it, you go to donate, and then you're sort of talked out of donating. I'm like, keep it simple. Like, just let people give and recognize that, yeah, you're gonna pay, but heck, if you can start bringing in $1,000 more a month in donations, then that's fine. It's worth it. So, and
he's right.
Sorry, what's that?
No, you're right. These fees are a part of the business of raising money. So yeah.
It's both. Like, I think it's smart, but sorry.
When we ran a crowdfunding campaign last year, which we're doing again this spring, there were many in our congregations that were hesitant to use their MasterCard online. So some of it is the age group. So talking about make it easy, one of the things I did is I took my laptop to church and just activated the way and just said, if you want to. Now I did actually, because our computers tend to, when you enter a credit card number, want to save that credit card number, which is a risk management thing in terms of offering this kind of make it easy. So I did have a volunteer stand with me and witness that every time someone came and I helped them to enter their credit card number, that I said, do not save this on my computer. I don't want that. And made sure that they were somewhat aware of kind of what was happening. But I did find, like, I probably had 15 people that came and, offered contribution to that campaign who would otherwise not have, because on their own at home, or they didn't have a computer to do it. So that can be another. And then, I don't know, Angela, in the past, we even, by the sounds of it, we had a tradition at one point where we actually had envelopes at the churches with our address on it. And because I've had people say, what's your address? We used to have the envelope. It's like, we'll go to the website. The address is there, right? But people aren't necessarily, in some of the age categories, comfortable to even go to the website and find the contact information. So they have such an expectation of access to that information differently than how we're providing it.
Yeah. And I was going to say, and they're responding. You're at worship with them, and you probably said something, and they are inspired to invite or inspired to donate right now. And so by putting barriers in front of them, you know what I mean? So by you sitting there with the computer, brilliant. And the other thing I'll say with like the Sustainer campaign we did with monthly donors, and I hear you, PAR, take it or leave it. But what was great about PAR is that Judith, who runs it, would let us people would just text me a picture of their check or their information of their banking stuff. Like they would email it or text it to me, and I'd just send that to the PAR people in Toronto. So it was very, very easy. We didn't have forms. In the body of the text or email, they'd be like, hey, $25 a month, Lumsden Beach Camp, here's my mailing address, or it'd be on the check, depending on like kind of how they're sending it. And that was it. I authorize you to do this. And so I was just sending like screenshots of text messages, which just made it so quick and easy. If you have a practice of, needing to fill out a form, that's fine. But I encourage people to send the form. Don't be like, become a monthly donor. You just have to go to our website and download the form and print it off, because who has a printer, and fill it out and mail it back in. No, it's 2024. We cannot do that. We have to make it like so streamlined for people so that that they can sign up. Which is why also like Canada Helps that does processes monthly gifts. And I don't know if PayPal does, but PayPal does have great rates, is nice, because then it's they can just do it themselves. They don't have to interact with you at all. The downside is that credit cards expire every 4 or 5 years, and often it's hard to get people re-engaged. Bank accounts tend to be a bit more static. That's all. So anyways, I think we're out of time. I'm pretty sure, right, Chris? Or yeah, I didn't know if we were. I want to keep.
We're trying to keep it to 60.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's good. Are there any final questions before we end our days? Well, thank you very much, Vicki. And I know that you've provided your email to the chat. And I'm sure people will be reaching out to you with more questions. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for being able to come and join us. And we'll make this recording available when we're able to pull it off of off the cloud.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks
And yeah,
for